Alrighty. Good afternoon, everyone. Hope you're all doing well. No, I didn't forget to turn the mic on. I just usually don't have it on at the start of streams. No, we'll do another Chaos Bane stream later tonight, but it's going to be over on Twitch. Alright, and for the first map, let's go to... Actually, let's just start on Storm Demon. Storm Demon's a good map. Alright. Can turn that slowly down and off. I hope life has been treating you well. Let's go ahead and get this party started. So, for our first match of today, we have Zack versus Janet on occasion. I wanted to do a tournament yesterday, but unfortunately, some stuff happened with Chloe, and she had to go to an emergency vet. But thankfully, she's okay now. It was just a little spooky. So without further ado, let's get the party rolling. So Janet on occasion is going to be bringing Beastman today, while Zack is going to be bringing Bretonia. So we've got a classic matchup here. Curious if the Children of Chaos or if the ladies noble paladins will come out on top today. If Chloe was in Warhammer, would she be a Wolf of Ulrich? I don't know what Chloe would be. Chloe's a little too peaceful and just not threatening to really be. I mean, I call her the Chloeodon for a reason. You love the tournament? Well, thank you, sir. I love you too. Alright, let's start with Janet's army today, chat. So we've got 4 units of Razorgore herds. Really, really nice AP there. We've got a regular Beast Lord, and he's got all the fun items. He's got the Horn of the First Beast, Apocalyptic Vision, and the Totem of Rust. So he's got both of his items. Then for a Wizard, we have a Shadowcaster on a Chariot with Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma, Enfeebling Foe, and Occam's Mind Razor. So a lot of damage buffs. Then we've got 2 units of Minotaurs with great weapons. 5 units of Ungor Spearman herd with shields. Looks like we've got 2 units of Centaurs with great weapons and 2 units of Chaos Warhounds with poison. I really like this army. I think for me personally, I would take less Razorgores just because I'm not as comfortable with them. But I think for Janet, this is a really solid pick. Then over here on Bretonia, we do have some mounted yeomen. 2 units of Royal Hippogriff Knights, led by King Lewin Leonker. And then we've got, looks like 5 units of Men-at-Arms. 2 units of Peasant Bowmen. And then another 5 units of Spearmen-at-Arms. And then a Damsel of Life with Earthblood, Regrowth, and Shield of Thorns, along with her scroll and items. And then a Heaven's Wizard with just Harmonic Convergence and a Power Stone. Double Power Stones. So a ton of magic comes from Bretonia. And we're here on Storm Demon with meteors raining from the sky. And we'll have to see who comes out on top. Cool to know, Undertaker. I'll check it out. Alright, so looking at the matchup, I do think that Janet's army is going to have a little bit more of a struggle. Oh, there's 2 mountain units of Mountain Yeoman. I do think Janet's army is going to be fighting uphill against the very, very nasty Air Force up here, especially because he doesn't have any archers to really force the engagement. That being said, this internet will be well designed, or this army will do quite well at smashing through this Bretonnian line like it's not even there. But they do have to be careful because there's nothing they can really do to force these guys to ground. We do see an early Melkots has gone down on this first unit of Royal Hippogriff Knights, probably to keep them back and out of the fray while the big charges are going in. We got a double chariot charge there, and then Razor Gores and Centaurs colliding all over the line. It looks like our first spell, which is a nice Shield of Thorns, goes down. I don't think it's going to do the Bretonnians much good, just because their leadership's going to kind of snap, crackle, and pop. But, yeah. That spell gave them resistance, but it's not going to help against just the massive amount of fear. And here we see the Mounted Yeomen do charge in to try and body block the Minotaurs with great weapons, who have engaged on Lewin and the Royal Hippogriff Knights and the Mounted Yeomen. It looks like a buff has gone down on the healthier unit of Minotaurs of Occam's Mindrazor, which is going to make them very, very deadly to the Bretonnians, giving them magic damage and, of course, tons of spells. Then the Beast Lord rides in and pops all of his buffs. The Royal Hippogriff Knights are taking a ton of damage. Meanwhile, the back line has been absolutely savaged by the Centaurs and the Warhounds of Poison. This unit of Royal Hippogriff Knights has completely shattered, just got torn apart, and Lewin is trying to get out. He needs to get up in the air. This is a death sentence if he does not get up right now. He pops Foe Seeker and the Lion Shield to try and give him a way out, but he does have Melkots on him. That being said, Lewin is pretty fast, and all he needs is a couple of seconds of not being attacked to get up in the air. But those pigs are staying on him like hot, hot fire. And the balance of power has swung significantly in Jaren on Occasion's favor, as the Bretonnian infantry line has just been completely sundered. Lewin does manage to break away, and it looks like he's about to pop up into the air any second here. Oh, I spoke too soon. Every once in a while, one of those Minotaurs just kind of rams him in the back, or a pig gets him. But looks like he's about to break any second here. Meanwhile, there's only really one unit of Royal Hippogriff line Knights holding the entire Bretonnian army together. Lewin does finally get up in the air, but he has sustained so much damage. Both of the wizards are like pretty much the only thing left. Most of the Bretonnian infantry have been completely scattered and run off, and their lack of heavy infantry is really being felt in this particular moment. So I'm not really sure what the Bretonnians are going to be able to do at this point. We do see a charge coming down here from the Royal Hippogriff Knights into the Centaurs with great weapons, trying to potentially push them off the battlefield. But of course, the instant they land, this massive horde of heavy beastmen comes swarming in. We see what looked like was going to be another Occam's Mindrazor, but Lewin instead, it looks like he pops Enfeebling Foe instead to protect himself. But a Scroll of Shielding does go down on Lewin, which is going to kind of carry him through. But in the meantime, his Royal Hippogriff Knights have been completely eviscerated, and now he's being fully surrounded, and he's popping all of his buffs, but that's just not really going to do him any good at this point. Like, his wizards are still running around in good health, but Lewin's going to be dead here any second. He is completely surrounded, and there is no way in hell he's getting out of here. And that is a shattered King Lewin. He decides, nope, this is not the fight worth dying for. This is not my country. I don't care. And with him dead, the rest of the army shatters, and that is army losses. So Janet on Occasion takes a very, very swift first victory by just pummeling the Bretonnians into the dirt. That front line just got completely eviscerated, and when the flying units landed, there was just a excellent, massive horde of large targets able to slow them down and tear them apart. It's a great game to both players. Very efficient and dead. Changer of ways. Good to see him, my man. So with that, we are on. Let me go ahead and update the roster, and then we will be on to game 2. So the Ruthless Beastmen of Janet on Occasion taking a early victory for today. If I can figure out which of these is Janet. There you are. Whoop. So next up, we've got Pharaoh War versus Drees. See if I've got them in here. There's Drees. Where's Pharaoh? Assuming he has not changed his name, which knowing him, he probably has. There he is. Pharaoh will be running his usual of Tomb Kings today, I believe. Yep. And Drees will be running Dark Elves. Oh, we need to switch the map. Let's go to Karak Azgal. It's a fun map. Boop. Oops. All right. Hope you're all having a great day. I've had a very productive day. I recorded over 2 hours of footage and, well, mostly voice recordings, but 2 hours of, and that's after editing, 2 hours of voice recording for the next lore video, the next big dick lore video, shall I say. And oh boy, is it gonna be spicy. Hope you're all looking forward to that. So basically the Tomb Kings reveal trailer all over again, only if the Tomb Kings win. What's my opinion on the new Lizardmen? They're pretty awesome. They feel really, really good. I like the new Lizardmen. I've had so many people messaging me being like, I miss when you used to do lore videos. And I'm like, I feel like you don't understand how long these take sometimes. Anyway, let's get into the rosters here. So over here with Drees, we've got a double sorceress build. We got a Supreme Sorceress Abyss on a Dark Steed, if I can figure out where she just went. There she is. And she's bringing Transformation of Caden, Flock of Crows, and Arnzapal's Black Horror, which is the missing spell from the Lore of Dark Magic, but you can take it as a scroll. And then I've got a Sorceress of Death here, and you can't see the game, so that would probably be good to move this up there. There we go. Much better. So we got a Sorceress of Death here with just Spirit Leech. Then we've got, looks like, 2 units of Dark Riders with shields, 2 units of Dark Riders with crossbows, 2 units of Harpies, 2 units of Cold One Knights, 2 units of Cold One Chariots, 4 units of Dread Spears, the Sisters of Singing Doom. So pretty cav heavy, or yeah, generally cav heavy Dark Elf list. Meanwhile, over on the Tomb King side, we've got 2 units of Carrion. It looks like 5 units of Skeleton Spearmen, one of which is King Nekesh's Scorpion Legion. Then we've got 1 unit of Skeleton Warriors, 1 unit of Nehakaran Warriors, 3 units of Ushapti, 2 units of Tomb Scorpions, Cetra the Imperishable up on a Kitty. And it looks like for spells, he's got a ton of magic. Man, we've got Incantation of Cursed Blades, Incantation of Protection, Incantation of Desiccation. And then, of course, you have the ever-present Necrotect, who has all of his abilities and all of his items. Not a bad pick with Cetra. Alright, and we are off. Pharaoh of War and Drees, both really, really good, well-established players. It's going to be interesting here to see who comes out on top. So already we have the Dark Riders with repeater crossbows trying to get some shots into the Carrion, but Carrion are, of course, a little difficult to hit. And the Carrion do actually get a very nice charge into these Dark Rider crossbows, as they are clearly not on skirmish stance. They are getting some nice early damage into the Ushapti and Tomb Scorpion, but of course the Necrotech can heal that up in a desperate situation if he needs to. But the Dark Riders do start to fall back as the Tomb Kings get a little close. And here we can see the Tomb Kings are trying to close the gap as quickly as possible, as they don't have any ranged units, so they probably want to get into the fight as quick as they can. And we have a tiny bit of lag in this battle, but nothing too bad. Here we do see a really solid charge from the Cold One chariots. The spearmen, of course, weren't braced, so they just took a ton of damage for free. And here we do see the Dark Elf army is closing in hard on these spearmen over here, amidst a little bit of stretching lag-wise. But a really solid charge. Once again, these spearmen weren't braced, so they are going to take a ton of damage. We do see an early Spirit Leech going down on a Tomb Scorpion, which is an excellent pick for that. Tomb Scorpions are super annoying, and they are worth getting rid of as quickly as possible. Granted, they can heal with the Necrotech's help, so you do have to kind of apply a lot of consistent pressure. So all across the battlefield, the skeletons have met the front line of the Dark Elves. Ushabti are running in, and a really nice drive-by with Cetra there. He just ran in, hit the Dread Spears with his Exploding Sun ability, and really used it just to disrupt their line so that the Ushabti could run in and just wreck shop. But the Ushabti are getting countercharged all along the line by these Cold One Knights. And you can see they're taking a ton of damage, especially because this is the one place where Spearmen are not supporting them. So this is a really good home for those Cold One Knights. Meanwhile, the first Manticore has been summoned, and it looks like it's beelining for that Tomb Scorpion just to do a ton of damage. And whoo boy, is this thing taking a beat down. We see another Spirit Leech going down. It's got a Manticore in the rear. It's got Cold One Knights coming at it from both directions. And now the really big fight is beginning. Looks like this is going to be an incantation of desiccation, if I had to guess. Yep, here it comes. So that's been overcast as well. So it's reducing the melee attack down to 0 on almost all of these units, which is going to do a really nice job of buying the Tomb King some precious time. But unfortunately for the Tomb Kings, almost as soon as that goes off, the Dark Elves do get their bonus, which is going to improve their damage. So if that when the moment that desiccation wears off, they are going to start pounding people. And sure enough, actually, you know, it kind of worked out in the Tomb King's favor that he timed it just like that. I don't think he did that on purpose, because there's no real way to really know where your opponent's meter is. But that actually worked out in his favor, that a lot of the Dark Elves' buffs from their army ability are not, from Murderous Prowess, are not helping them right now, because the melee attack on all these units is literally 0. So the Dark Elves ended up losing this massive fight in the middle, despite the fact that they had a ton of spear-using anti-large units in it. So both of the Cold One Knight units have been effectively dealt with, and the Manticore is about halfway dead, and it's almost all the way through its summoning. So that Manticore is going to be petering off here any second. The balance of power is still extremely even, but the Dark Elves have pulled their usual stunt, or the Tomb Kings, excuse me, of gathering kind of all of their big units into the center to try and get the Necrotech buffs. And here we do see Arnsapal's Black Horror go down, and it looks like it's going to get a really nice hit on these Skeleton Warriors and all these Skeleton Spears, and it's going to do a really nice job of freeing up the Supreme Sorceress from being surrounded. And it did a ton of damage to those units and allowed her to escape. Really nice, efficient use of that spell. Down here, we see that the Witch Elves are doing their job very well, causing massive amounts of frenzy, or rampage, to appear all over the place. And I can't really see where... Oh, there they are. The head of the units over there. And because they cause terror, the Sisters of Singing Doom don't even need their frenzy to remain immune to Psych in this situation. They're in a really good spot. Over here, we do see that there is a little bit of focus trying to go down the Necrotech to finish it off, but he doesn't really seem to be taking a lot of damage. Meanwhile, we see another Spirit Leech going down on this Tomb Scorpion, and I would not be surprised to see another Manticore showing up soon. The first the Ushabti summon has gone down, which is of course not nearly as powerful as it used to be, since it's on a hard timer now, and it's not the longest timer either. These Ushabti definitely do not last as long as they probably would have, just through having a generic health drain. So the Dark Elves, I mean, when you're fighting these now, if you can get them into a spot where they're not super dangerous, you can effectively ignore them. Meanwhile, the Dark Elf leadership is in really good health. They do still have tons of ammo that they're firing into the Tomb Kings, we see that Cetra is starting to take damage, and really this comes down to if these shooting units can do enough damage to Cetra to threaten him before he takes out the Dark Elf leadership. Because the Dark Elves are doing a really nice job of seeing off all the Dark Elf units, or sorry, the Tomb Kings are doing a really nice job of seeing off the Dark Elf units one at a time. But a lot of their strength, balance, power-wise is coming from this unit of Summoned Ushabti right now, who are over 50% of the way through their timer. And although Cetra is super powerful, and he does have the Blessed Blade of Petra popped, meanwhile this Sorceress has, I believe, the Flammable debuff, or she did have it on her a moment ago. Unfortunately, it's not going to do her a ton of good, Cetra a ton of good, as she is much faster than him and did get the heck out of dodge. That being said, the Sisters of Singing Doom have broken due to the sheer amount of damage they've taken, and really the only thing left in this major engagement is Chariots, which Chariots are not very good in sustained combat. They are going to take a ton of damage. That being said, though, when this super unit of Ushabti dies, this Necrotect is actually going to be very isolated amongst a lot of enemy Dread Spears and the Sorceress of Death. So he could potentially get killed off here, which if that were to happen could be devastating for the Tomb Kings. As once these guys are gone, the only thing really holding their army together at this point are Cetra the Imperishable and the Tomb Scorpion. But with that being said, when you really look across the whole army, as far as who has the most dangerous threats on the battlefield, the Dark Elves don't have a ton of answers to deal with Cetra the Imperishable. As really the only thing they have going for them are these repeater crossbows, who are of course being harassed by the Carrion. And of course, apologies ladies and gentlemen that we're getting a little bit lag still, but we do have a nice charge coming in here doing some more damage to the Ushabti. But once again, I think this is actually starting to look pretty okay for the Tomb Kings, just because Cetra and that Tomb Scorpion are in such high health. And there we saw that Ushabti unit did completely disintegrate and die off very quickly, so they've been removed from the equation, and now the only fast, hyper-fast Tomb King unit that's able to harass these Dark Elf Expo Riders are the Carrion, who are of course being swarmed and murdered by the Harpies. Meanwhile, the remaining Ushabti are fairly low on health. This unit only has 3 models left and only about 300 health. That being said, there are still 10 models in this unit, 9 models in this unit, an almost full health Tomb Scorpion, and Cetra the Imperishable is in really, really good shape. He does overcast Nero's Incantation of Protection on himself, which does a little bit of damage, unfortunately, due to a miscast, but I don't really see the Dark Elves pulling this off. Like, the only thing they can really do at this point is just kind of spam ammo into Cetra. But over here, the Sorceress of Death is trying to kill the Necrotech, but it looks like the Necrotech is actually kind of winning that engagement. We do see the Dark Riders are falling back, which is perfectly legal, as they are attacking the Tomb Kings in the back here. So even though they're retreating on this line, they are still considered on the attack, so really great play there. This unit of Ushabti still hasn't given, is still only debilitating. They have not given in to, what do you call it? Not crumbling, disintegration yet, but they were killed off in that those final moments. So here we see that all the Tomb King infantry is dead, and now the only thing left is Cetra the Imperishable, 2 very, very low health units of Ushabti, and a fairly healthy Tomb Scorpion, who does have the Elixir of Might popped and is doing a really, really good job just tearing into Dread Spears. However, these Dark Riders over here are firing into these Ushabti, who are taking a good couple hundred damage from every volley, and those Dark Riders still have about 40% ammo left on both units, and they are going to have an easy time just harassing the hell out of these Tomb Kings. The Sisters of Singing Doom have rallied along with these Dark Riders and are providing some excellent support here, and we do see a Spirit Leech actually go down on this unit of Ushabti to try and just force them off the field as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, we see that the Necrotech was actually curb stomping this Sorceress of Death and was defeating her and the Supreme Sorceress despite having the double team up there. Cetra is heavily pursuing this Death Sorceress, but it looks like he kind of gives up on that and goes after the Beast Supreme Sorceress. There's a fair amount of damage, and we're starting to see a number of shatters coming through on the Dark Elf line. All the Ushabti are dead now, so the only thing left are the Necrotect, the Tomb Scorpion, which is in very high health, and of course Cetra the Imperishable himself. If the Dark Elves can, they really should try and focus some considerable effort into killing off this Necrotect, and then the Scorpion, and then Cetra. Just try and, like, reduce the amount of targets that you need to deal with. However, it looks like they are focusing a ton of their effort into the Tomb Scorpion, and unfortunately getting a decent amount of friendly fire into these Kobolin Chariots. And of course, it is quite unfortunate that this battle is not only kind of a long, difficult, crazy battle, but is also suffering from a fair amount of lag. That being said, the Tomb Scorpion is taking a reasonable amount of damage, but Tomb Scorpions are notoriously hated in the multiplayer community because of how wild and erratic their animations are. It can make them very, very difficult to pin down, both physically and with missile fire, as they tend to just sort of roll out of it or accidentally dodge it just with their wild attack animations. And at this point, the balance of power has started to significantly move in favor of Cetra, and here you'll see what I'm talking about, that Tomb Scorpion effectively just juked all of those crossbow shots due to his very erratic attack animations. These Dark Riders, of course, do still have plenty of ammo, but the balance of power is significantly against the Dark Elves. And I don't think they have enough time. We do see a Narrow's Incantation of Protection going down on the Tomb Scorpion, which is going to provide him a rather significant buff, but I'm pretty sure it's over at this point. I mean, the Dark Elves don't have anything left that causes or is immune to terror, so it's only a matter of time until they kind of get a mass terror route like we're seeing right here. And what this Harpy is doing a little jig as she refuses to go into the ground there. But in any event, the chariots have been broken, both of them, so they're heading out, and the Supreme Sorceress is now between a rock and a hard place, literally, as she has two constructs jumping on her, trying to kill her, and she's just taking tons of damage. Cetra is being kept out of the fight, as is the Necrotech, kind of miraculously by this Kobold Chariot. That was until the chariot exploded, probably due to one of them getting tired of its shit. But, yeah, this Tomb Scorpion is taking quite a bit of damage, but Cetra does pop his Exploding Sun ability, and there's not really a lot left going for the Dark Elves at this point. I mean, they do still have ammo, but not enough to really win this, and understanding that, Drees goes ahead and surrenders the battle. Alright, so that's going to be a game for Pharaoh of War. There was an unfortunate amount of lag in that game, but I do believe that it turned out fairly as I expected, personally. But so we've got Pharaoh of War moving on to the semis. All right, next up, we've got Wicked, who will be bringing more Bretonnians, versus Hit by a Tree, who will be bringing the much despised Vampire Coast. So we'll have to see if the Vampire Coast has been effectively dealt with at this point. And for this map, how about... oh, I don't know. Let's go to the Central Chaos Waste. That's a favorite of many people. It's the part of Chaos that's a little bit green. Ah, there he is. All right. Everyone's bad at Hit by a Tree for not taking wood elves. Alright, so this will definitely be a difficult matchup for the Bretonnians, but let's see what they can do. Kyle Heisel, hello! Yeah, we actually don't have any Skaven or Lizards this week, which is pretty surprising, seeing as they just came out. Dr. Zero, yeah, pretty much. Alright, so let's start with Hit by a Tree, who is not a Wood Elf player. He's got a Carronade. Count Noctilus on top of his Necrofex Colossus with Drowned Dead, Invocation, and the Moon Dial. We've then got 5 units of Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mob with Polearms. Looks like a single unit of Depth Guard. Another 4 units? 4? Yes, 4 units of Zombie Pirate Deckhand Mobs, the regular ones. We've then got 2 units of Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mobs with handguns. We've got the Night Terrors, who I have not seen on a battlefield in a super long time. A unit of Scurvy Dogs with some chevrons, and the Lamprey's Revenge, who are a very, very tanky unit. The Night Terrors, how interesting. I have not seen them in a very long time. Oh yeah, Kyle, I am very ready. I'm probably gonna have to do like a whole video set on that. Meanwhile, over on the side of Wicked, we have, or Wick-D, I guess it depends on, I'm not sure which way he pronounces it. But we've got 3 units of Peasant Mobs. We've got 2 units of Peasant Bowmen with Pox Arrows, yep. Then we've got 5 units of Spearmen at Arms, a unit of Foot Squires. We've got the Beast Slayers of Baston. Great unit. And then we've got 1 regular unit of Men-at-Arms. Meanwhile, we've got Alberic de Bordelot with his new and improved Sexy Trident, which I do love oh so much. And he has the Braid of Bordelot for that nice anti-large buff. And he's got Spirit of the Tempest for that charge bonus and speed buff locally as well. He's got a unit of Grail Knights, a Damsel of Life who just has Earthblood. Then we've got 3 units of Questing Knights and the Regiments of Renown Knights Errant, the Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. So very knight-heavy contingent. If he can, he will definitely want to start on the side of this hill and come kind of over it to minimize the distance that he has to travel while being in cannon range. But we'll see what happens. Well, I'm going to go ahead and call him Wicked because it sounds better than Wick-D in my opinion. Watch him come out and he's like, Wick-D is it? Now I'm mad. And I'm going to be like, oh, I'm sorry. So we do have a little sneaky stink going on here with some Scurvy Dogs in the back, though. They're probably not going to have a ton of purchase in the Bretonnian line. But you never know. Maybe the Bretonnians won't notice them. I think the key thing here is the Bretonnian peasant line will want to bull rush, and then the flying line will just want to dive. I would probably dive bomb the Carronade with Alberic just to wipe it out real quick. Either that or slip around the Knight Defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis. And then have Alberic just focus Count Noctilus, because Alberic should be able to beat him mano-a-mano pretty easily. But let's see what happens. Ooh, I would definitely would have gone with the former deployment. Alright, so the battle has begun. The peasants are running as fast as they can, and the Carronades are about to open fire on those poor Questing Knights, who are exposing their flank. Don't expose your flank! Oh, baby, oh no. If you're ever going to expose your flank to cannons, make sure to change your formation so that it's thin. Because you want to show the least amount of models possible. Unfortunately, looks like Wicked panics a little bit and throws down an Earthblood, which is doing absolutely nothing. Because no Questing Knights were wounded. They were just killed. So unfortunately, that's a waste of a spell. Some Winds of Magic right there. The peasant line is, of course, hauling across the battlefield, and it looks like the knights are going for the full circle surround. So it's going to be a little bit before they engage. But, luckily for the Bretonnians, it looks like the Vampire Coast is reforming their battle line, which means the Carronades are not firing, which is actually good for the Bretonnians, because the more distance they can cover without the Carronades and Noctilus firing, the better. But we do see they're starting to open fire. Noctilus gets a really nice shot there of overfiring the Peasant Mob and the Spearmen of Arms, hitting both units despite only aiming at one. And it looks like the Bretonnians are coming around the far flank. If they can, when you look from this Carronade's position, when a map like this, you really want to try and come over this hill here. But you can see it looks like the Bretonnians are maybe going to overcompensate and come all the way around, but that's actually going to provide the Carronade and Noctilus with an angle to turn and shoot them. Generally, whenever you see your opponent and you have terrain to your advantage, you want to try and pick the minimal distance between the blocking terrain and yourself. Here we do see the Bretonnian line does make it to the front line, but they're being a little slow about engaging. They're probably waiting for further support or maybe trying to take advantage of their archers. But either way, it's kind of a risky trade-off. That being said, a Summon of Drowned Dead was popped, and these guys will die after they're already a quarter of the way through their summon. So pulling back a little bit and letting your archers get some work done isn't necessarily a bad play at all. Meanwhile, though, we do see the peasant mobs have moved into range of the guns and are doing their job very, very well. They're eating bullets, and that's what peasants are for. Meanwhile, we do see that Noctilus is focusing fire onto the archers there, doing a fair amount of damage. And Albrecht has landed in the midst of these depth guard, and he is going to tear them apart. Oh, archers making an excellent decision here under Wicked, focusing the Carronade. If they can actually manage to keep this up, that would be an excellent catch out with the archers. They could do a ton of damage there. Over here, the Grail Knights and the Questing Knights managed to get a really nice charge into the Lamprey's Revenge. And these two working together do have what it takes to take down a nasty unit like the Lamprey's Revenge. But he needs to take these guns offline right now. Albrecht needs to get involved. Albrecht probably needs to jump on Noctilus, while these two units here, one needs to get on the guns and one needs to get on the Carronade and just take them out. Here we do see the defenders of the Fleur-de-Lis trying to get onto these guns so they get kind of a weak engagement, while Albrecht has managed to get onto Noctilus himself and has engaged the foul creature in combat. Pretty nice charge from the Questing Knights here into a nasty opponent. And then, oh, Albrecht gets a beautiful charge, tearing apart the Carronade, but he needs to get the hell out of there. He is taking way too much damage from those guns. It is time to go. Meanwhile, the Night Terrors have engaged in the main line, but the Beast Slayers have stepped up to fight them. And Albrecht, buddy, you got to get up in the air. Get out of there, man. Get out of there. Those guns are just eviscerating him. The Bretonnians need to get on them immediately. You can't engage while they're alive guns. It's just a death sentence. So things are already looking pretty dicey for Bretonnia. They don't have regrowth. The only spell they brought is Earthblood. So they don't have a way to mass heal Albrecht. If he does rally, literally the only thing they can do is try and bring him around where he can get off an Earthblood. But Noctilus has done a very good job, as he tends to do, of surrounding himself with a mix of Depth Guard, polearms, and all sorts of other nastiness. And now the Bretonnians are on the gun, but the problem is the Bretonnians are getting on one gun unit, but it took them so long to do that, that by the time they get onto one unit, another unit's already been freed up, Noctilus has been freed up, and you see the Bretonnians are really having a hard time engaging multiple fronts. One of the things that you have to do when you play an army like Bretonnia that makes it so hard compared to the undead is that you have to land all of your engagements at the same time. If you don't land all your engagements as a big charge all together, then the odds of you coming out victorious are very, very poor. So pretty much at this point, the Bretonnian army has been pretty successfully torn apart. The only thing really left standing at this point are a couple of peasant units. I mean, the Beast Slayers of Baston are in pretty good shape, but so much of the Bretonnian army has been destroyed that, like, they're going to hit army losses pretty soon. Problem with a unit like the Beast Slayers of Baston is you really need them to be in the front line if you're fighting against the undead pirates. You'll notice that Wicked in this case actually put them in the very back of his line as if he was going to be using them in a defensive formation. But Vampire Coast are not an army that are going to fight you using allowing you to take advantage of defensive formations. You have to play very, very offensively against the Vampire Coast. Overall, I mean, Albrecht has rallied so he can hold up the leadership for a little while, and the Bretonnians have sort of rallied on this far flank. They have managed to take down a lot of these really gnarly infantry units, but the cav line has just been absolutely eviscerated. And both of those gun units are still up and firing, and I really think Bretonnia probably would have been better off with a really elite infantry force. And unfortunately, at that point, we do see army losses kick in, And that's going to be a win for Count Noctilus and the Vampire Coast. And the Bretonnians are out for today. Really good game by both players. Unfortunately, it's just one of those things where when you play a list like Hit by a Tree brought and you're playing something like Wicked here has, I do think Wicked's list can win this engagement, but you have to deploy so carefully, and you really need to like take strong advantage of your opponent's army. Like, you have to know where you need to be and just strike everywhere simultaneously, and that is so hard to do. But really good game to both players. Let's go ahead and update the score sheet here, and then we will be off to the final quarterfinal matchup today. So Hit by a Tree is on to the semis. Now, last but certainly not least, we've got Moo Kip versus Sarmatian. And let's head off to... let's go to Castle Drakenhof. Not you, Pharaoh. So we've got Sarmatian and Moo Kip. I see Moo Kip. Invite him. And there's Sarmatian. Wonderful. Ooh, boy. I think I might get some painting done later today. Alright, and for today's armies, for both of these players, Sarmatian will be bringing the Wood Elves, who we think we saw 2 weeks ago. And Moo Kip is bringing the Dark Elves. So we've got a nice Elven Civil War here. Should be a pretty interesting matchup. I don't think you see Dark Elves versus Wood Elves too terribly often. All right. Let's see what the battle has in store. Alright, let's start with the Wood Elves. We've got Orion here with he's got the Cloak of Aisha, and then he's got both his bow, the Hawk's Talon, and the Hounds of Orion. Then we've got 2 units of Eternal Guard, one with shields, one without, and the shield one is the Winterheart Guards, the Regiment of Renown. Very cool coloration. Oh, no, we've actually got 3 units of Eternal Guard. Sorry, with spears. The only one with shields, though, is the ROR. We've got 1 unit of War Dancers, 3 units of Glade Guard with Hagbane tips, 2 units of Wild Riders. We've got 2 units of Dryads, and then 2 units of Glade Riders with Hagbane tips. A Branch Wraith with most of her spells, Awakening of the Wood, Earthblood, Melkos Mystify Miasma, and Penetral Pendulum. And I think that does it. So pretty interesting Wood Elf build. He's running a lot of really basic core troops. Fascinating. Meanwhile, over on the Dark Elf side, we have Supreme Sorceress of Death with just Spirit Leech. Then we've got, looks like 4 units of Dread Spears. 3 units, wow, of Harkonneth Executioners. That is a ton of melee power. 2 units of Dark Riders with shields, 2 units of Dark Riders with repeater crossbows, 1 unit of Cold One Knights, 2 units of Dark Shards, and a War Hydra with the goofy-ass rattlesnake tail. It should be pretty interesting. Both armies are running fairly head-on engagement forces, but both of them do have a fair amount of shooting and support. That Hydra could actually be pretty gnarly for the Wood Elves if they don't manage to focus him down in time, but I imagine they should be able to. Here we do see that the first few waves of the Hagbane tips are going down into the Harkonneth Executioners, which do have a decent amount of AP, so they are capable of wounding and killing these guys fairly straightforward, and of course they will be slowing their movement and debuffing other stats as they charge forward. We do see the Dark Riders try again a charge into the Glade Riders, but are repelled by the Dryads. The Hydra, though, is having none of this, and he does move forward, though he seems to just be eating a bunch of missile fire for his trouble. And the Harkonneth Executioners, are going to get caught by a Hounds of Orion cast, though unfortunately it doesn't go the best direction and doesn't seem to do a whole ton. Orion here just casually charging through all these Dread Spears without a care in the world, so he can go poke this Hydra in the butt. And that's definitely going to upset it, as he does have quite a bit of anti-large melee damage, if memory serves. Oh, yes. We are still, unfortunately, getting a little bit of lag. I'm assuming, I wonder if it's with CA's servers at this point. But, looks like we might have a little bit of trouble with Moo Kip giving his guys orders, as he does sort of waltz his Dark Shards into the midst of this combat. He needs to make sure that he's giving them looks like he's moving them as one big group and hasn't noticed that he's ran his archers into both combats, which could be really, really bad for him. Over here we do see that the Dark Elves have managed to get around the flank, and the Dark Riders do a nice job of blocking the Wild Riders and get off a pretty sexy Spirit Leech that is definitely going to hurt that unit significantly if they lose too many unit models. And a really nice side breath coming in from the Hydra, who could easily start wailing on that Branch Wraith and actually do a ton of damage to her if he tried, but it looks like he's too preoccupied trying to deal with the Wild Riders, who do manage to get broken, but the Dark Elves are definitely losing the shooting engagement over here. Meanwhile, Orion is pursuing after the Hydra, and that is not going to be a good time for that Hydra. Once again, it is taking shots in the side and the back, so its melee defense is going to be significantly reduced. It's also being poisoned at the same time. And Orion is fighting in a forest right now, which means it's going to be debuffing the Hydra and buffing Orion, which is not ideal for him. Meanwhile, much of the melee engagement is going in the Dark Elves' favor, though they are being kind of stunted, or at least held back, by the Dryads and a lot of the basic infantry due to their very, very high melee defense, despite the Harkonneth Executioner's amazing weapon strength, anti-infantry bonus, and armor piercing. But here we do see the Dark Elves are trying to get a big push through. The Cold One Knights kind of run through this combat in an awkward way, and I think because of that they actually get caught in a really bad position. It looks like they're trying to go after the Wild Riders, but they are literally caught between a bunch of different units. They're trying to move through a combat that has heavy spearmen, and that's just not going to be a good time for them. Meanwhile, the Branch Wraith here is being caught out by this massive amount of infantry. The Supreme Sorceress has also taken a ton of damage. The Hydra is now being chased off by Orion, so that's very, very unfortunate. If he gives up, it does have a very good chance to heal a substantial amount of damage and, of course, come back, but odds of that are not looking super great. Back here, we do have the Dark Shards firing into the Glade Guard, but yeah, this is looking pretty rough for the Dark Elves. A lot of their units are starting to break off, and he's even getting a couple of shatters in there. But lucky for him, the Hydra does decide to come back and recover But Orion is now chasing the Supreme Sorceress of Death, who does charge into a unit, which means she's going to get caught out, and now she's surrounded by heavy Wild Riders, and Orion charges in, and he's probably going to kill her in about 2 shots. 1, 2, okay, 3 shots. I overestimated a hair, and she's dead. So with her gone, that is definitely going to be significant leadership penalties for the Dark Elves. And although they are managing to take out little isolated bunches of the Wood Elves, Sarmatian's much more significant micro skill is really showing off here. Over here in the forest, looks like the branch rate is still holding off some of these Hargoneth Executioners, still managing to do pretty nice amounts of damage with Awakening of the Wood. And at that point, Moo Kip goes ahead and calls it, with his general being dead, and I think he saw that he was kind of outnumbered and being attacked from just a ton of angles at once. Orion was still at full health, and wasn't a lot he could do at that point. So, well played to Moo Kip. I actually really like the really heavy front line. Unfortunately for him, it's just a very difficult matchup going up against Wood Elves. You have to be able to really focus your targets down one at a time. And it probably would have been better to keep the Hydra in reserve until it was really needed. Though he did actually make excellent use in it in eliminating one of these units of Wild Riders. But really well played game to both players. So with that, let's update the bracket once more. Man, it's getting warm in here. I need to turn up the AC. Boop. Which one of these is Moo Kip? Moo Kip. No, not Moo Kip. Sarmatian. Boom. All right. So it's time to return to Janet on occasion. And dear old Pharaoh of War. And this time we're going to take the battle to... Let's go to Altdorf Outskirts. Alright, once Pharaoh gets his Tomb King selected, we are off to the races. After I turn back the thing. Boop. Pig warfare. Altdorf, the perfect place for Dark Elves and Tomb Kings to fight. Yes, Adam, we keep our tournament matches lore appropriate only. Because this is totally where these two would throw down. Nobody would think that was strange or suspicious at all. Alright, so we got the Construct Heavy Tomb Kings up against the Bestial Heavy Beastmen with their hordes of Razor Gores and Minotaurs. This will be a pretty interesting fight. I think just looking purely at the list, the Beastmen have a bit of an advantage here due to having just a significant amount of very heavy units and a ton of anti-large. That being said, Tomb King constructs are super tough. And the Tomb Kings do have a ton of Terror Causers as well. In any event, though, here we go. So, on the Beastman side, we've got 2 units of Centaurs with great weapons, 2 units of Chaos Warhounds with poison, 5 units of Ungor Spearman herds with shields, 4 units of Razor Gore herd. We've got 2 units of Minotaurs with great weapons, and then we've got a Beast Lord on a chariot with both of his items. He's got the Totem of Rust, and then he's also got Horn of the First Beast, and then he also has Apocalyptic Vision ability. Then we have a Brave Chain of Shadows with Occam's Mind Razor, Melkoth's Mystifying Miasma and Enfeebling Foe, as well as the dagger that allows him to regenerate Winds of Magic. Meanwhile, on the Tomb King side, they also have 5 units of Spearmen, though one of theirs is the Regiment of Renown King Nakesh's Scorpion Legion. Then we have 3 units of Ushabti, 2 units of Tomb Scorpions. We've got Cetra the Imperishable on his nice, big Tomb Kitty. And he's got Incantation of Cursed Blades, Incantation of Protection, and Incantation of Desiccation, along with his amazing sword. Then we've got 1 unit of Nekara Warriors, 1 unit of Skeleton Warriors, and 2 units of Carrion. And with that, we're off! So already we see that both armies are probably going to beeline right for each other's faces. And it's actually a pretty even matchup, to be quite frank. It's literally, both armies have front lines of spearmen. You have Carrion countering the wolves. You've got Ushabti countering the piggies. You've got Tomb Scorpions countering the Minotaurs. And then you've got, of course, the really big Lord countering the Wizard Lord stack here. And it looks like, man, we are having some really bad lag today, unfortunately. Come on. Unfortunately, we may be having issues, of course, connecting to Pharaoh of War. He does, of course, live very, very far away. But it looks like it's stabilizing, so I'm not too worried. Alright, looks like the Tomb Kings have gotten on the high ground, and it looks like they're trying to get their spearmen to catch up with the rest of the army. But looks like they're not going to have time for that, because the Beastmen are not going to give them time. And just a colossal mass charge from both sides goes down. And you can see both sides are popping a bunch of buffs. You see Apocalyptic Vision go down, but it's countered by a very, very meaty Overcast incantation of Desiccation, which is actually going to tear down the, I mean, look at that. Even with the buff from Apocalyptic Vision, the melee attack was so reduced on the Beastmen. But Janet does manage to throw in the Horn of the first Beast as a nice way to try and keep their melee attack sustainable. We see Elixir. We literally see every single buff available being popped by both sides. And so far, it seems to be working a little bit better for the Tomb Kings than it is for the Beastmen. The Tomb Kings, all of their units are holding fairly strong. I mean, their Shafti have taken a fair amount of damage, and of course all the Spearmen are looking pretty rough. But they have managed to get rid of a unit of Razorgore Herd and Spearmen. Though it looks like both those units have already rallied and are going to start heading back to the fray. Looks like all the other unit pigs have run off the battlefield, at least for the moment. But of course, they'll be back. Meanwhile, as for the Minotaurs, one of the units of Minotaurs did get caught out pretty nastily and is taking a very, very unhealthy amount of damage. We see Realm of Souls going off, providing heals for the Tomb Kings, and Cetra is diving in here trying to get rid of this last unit of Minotaurs, as another one has been seen off. Though, knowing the Beastmen, they're probably going to swarm in on this Tomb Scorpion that's exposed, along with these Ushabti, and save those Minotaurs so that they can get back in on the charge. Meanwhile, here in the center of the line, we do see that the Minotaurs are fighting particularly well, though the Bray Shaman of the Beastmen is taking a ton of damage due to being surrounded by all sorts of really, really nasty constructs. And although the Beastmen are getting a ton of surround charges, they are being countercharged now by the Tomb Kings from pretty much every angle, and that Bray Shaman just absolutely gets terrified and starts running for his life. Hopefully the Tomb Kings don't have anything that can really successfully go after it. Looks like Cetra does pop his AoE to do some damage and maybe try and break some distance to run after it, but he's not going to be able to pull that off. Meanwhile, Janet is definitely going to want to rally his troops very, very quickly and get them all back into the fray as best he can. That is kind of what Beastmen excel at, is sort of breaking away as they lose an engagement and then cycle charging all back in. But the Tomb King have summoned their first unit of Ushabti, so if the Beastmen can, they should really try to avoid fighting for as long as possible. Though right now their general is caught in a really, really nasty engagement thanks to all those summoned Ushabti. But oh, look at that! He does actually manage to break free and pull out of that engagement. That's really, really good. At this point, it would probably be best for the Beastmen to find a couple of isolated units like this Tomb Scorpion and try picking them off with little hordes of units. But the balance of power is definitely significantly in the Tomb King's favor, as this is a very, very difficult match for the Beastmen. as this Beastman list does seem to rely heavily on kind of a shock and awe tactic. But shock and awe doesn't really work against an army that's functionally unbreakable. You know, they'll just fight till they die. You know, so when the enemy army doesn't break, all those Baconators, as Turin likes to call them, aren't really able to get their awesome value as shock troops. Undead are actually a really, really difficult target for them. And here we do see that the Beastmen are about to go ham. Haha, see what I did there? On this Tomb Scorpion, going so far as to pop an enfeebling foe. He's got poisonous warhounds on him, so they're going to do a ton of poison damage. And these Minotaurs are, of course, charging in, smacking him in the back, so his melee defense of 6 is going to be going down to like a 3. And this thing's going to get absolutely chewed up and spit out, more than likely. Looks like the Beast Lord is trying to delay other parts of the Tomb King army as best he can. Meanwhile, though, the Beastman army is rallying on the far side, and if they can, they probably want to rally into one super army. And boy, that Tomb Scorpion died quick. Good job there. We do see the Carrion dive down, and they actually managed to rout the Bray Shaman by just wailing on him from behind. But they do pay for it with their lives, and it's likely he will rally very, very shortly. Meanwhile, it does look like the Beastman army is trying to gather into a cohesive force so that it can continue the fight against the Tomb Kings, who actually have taken a fair amount of damage. We do see another unit of spearmen crumble away to death there, and this unit of skeleton warriors look like they're soon going to be joining it. However, there are still a ton of constructs left. I mean, there's one almost full health unit of Ushabti. It looks like the summoned unit has completely faded away. Yep. And the problem with the Beastman units is a lot of them are very, very low health. They're not immune to psychology, and there's a big fat terror causer right in the middle of this army. Here we do see that the Beast Lord tries to get a nasty charge into King to catch a Scorpion Legion, but unfortunately they were ready for him, and they braced. And not only were they braced, but they're poisonous. And we do see the Tomb King infantry swarming in from all sides, but the Minotaurs are charging in, trying to deal with this Necrotech, and probably are going to fall onto this Scorpion in a moment. But there's just a massive amount of counter charges going in all over the place. We see a ton of buffs being popped on the Minotaurs to try and make them as deadly as possible. But the Tomb King army comes swinging in with everything it has, and just the sheer volume of terror causing and damage is just going to be too much for the Beastmen. And with that, Pharaoh of War is off to the finals. Unfortunate matchup for Janet there. I mean, that's just he's got a really, really awesome shock and awe army here. But the bad thing about shock and awe is it doesn't work against the undead. So it's kind of a dangerous gambling game where you just sincerely hope your opponent is not undead, because if they are undead, they're just going to kind of sit there and keep fighting. And the bad thing about those sweet piggies is that if they're fighting against a foe who will just sit there and keep fighting until death, they are quite tenacious. And the pigs don't do super well, necessarily, in long, tenacious fights. But really good game by both players. I really like Janet's army. It's just unfortunate he ended up having to go up against Tomb Kings. Those damn undead boys. Alright, so next up we have Sarmatian versus Hit by a Tree. So we'll get to see if Hit by a Tree actually lives up to his name, or if he can actually, like, survive being hit by tree elves. And as for the map, let's head off to the Tower of Hoeth. Can't go wrong with a classic, right, chat? T-O-T-O-T-O. There we go. Sarmatian and Hit by a Tree. Poor little oinkers. Yeah, the bad thing about Razor Gores is, like, they're so fun, but the problem is if they run into something big that can actually hold out against them, not only do they start to suffer without their charge bonus, but then there's also a terror causer in the middle of it. And, like, Razor Gores just, oh man, they do not handle terror well. Not at all. Let me go message Hit by a Tree to make sure he's got it. Oh, okay, I just got a message. We got a little bit of a technical difficulty. But we will get it sorted out. Let's see. View my profile. Where is it? How do I do that thing? I want to share my profile. No, I don't want to edit. Damn it, how do I... Wait, I think I could just copy that. Do that. Whoops. All right. Yeah, really, Janet? All right, he's in. Cool beans. Wood Elves versus Vampire Coast. This should actually be a pretty interesting matchup. I think normally Wood Elves can take this pretty well. But Sarmatian didn't take, like, Way Watchers, so it might not be as straightforward for him as it normally is for people. But we'll see. Oh, Jake, sorry, brother. We don't have any bots. I'm too stupid to have figured out bots. So unfortunately, we haven't really had time to. I need to like get someone who could do that. All right, just to go over the armies again in case you missed them in the last match. For Sarmatian, he's got 3 units of Eternal Guard, one of which is the Regiment of Renown, the Winterheart Guard. He's also got 1 unit of War Dancers, 3 units of Glade Guard with Hagbane tips, 2 units of Glade Riders with Hagbane tips, 2 units of Wild Riders. Then he's got a Branch Wraith here with Regrowth, Awakening of the Wood. Not Regrowth. Earthblood, Awakening of the Wood, Melkot's Mystifying Miasma, and Penumbral Pendulum. He's got 2 units of Dryads. And then he's got the Mighty Lord himself, Orion, the King of the Woods, who has his usual kit, or who has a very well-rounded kit here of the Cloak of Aisha, along with Hawk's Talon and the Hounds of Orion. Meanwhile, on the Vampire Coast side of things, we've got 4 units of Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs, 5 units of Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs with polearms, 1 unit of Depth Guard. We've got the Night Terrors, a Regiment of Renowned Mournguls. We've got the Lamprey's Revenge, Regiment of Renowned Promethean Gunnery Mob. We also have 2 units of Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs with handguns, a Carronade, and then Count Noctilus on his big old Necrofex Colossus. And I honestly think that although the Vampire Coast can dictate, like, forcing the elves to come to them, the elves are going to have a very easy time tearing apart the ranged aspects of this army. So the Vampire Coast is going to need to be aggressive once they get close enough. 'Tis going to be a tricky. And there are Wood Elves all over the place. What do we got in here? I saw something. Ah, Wild Riders. So what, looks like there's 2 Vanguarded Wild Riders, some Vanguarded Dryads, and then both of the Glade Riders are Vanguarded. Alright, let's see what happens. I think this is going to be a tricky matchup for the old Vamp Coast, but we'll see. Alright, the battle has begun. The Wood Elves are already hauling their butts towards the Vampire Coast, and we see a really nice shot go down from Noctilus, killing 11 unit models. Meanwhile, not really sure what the Carronade was aiming at, but it didn't really seem to do anything. We do see that the Glade Riders have gotten in range, and they do start getting some really, really nice volleys down on the Carronade, though the Vampire Coast are very quick to turn around and start counter-firing into them. And I'd be really surprised, honestly, if the Glade Riders get off more than 2 volleys. And boy, they are eating a ton of damage. They really need to fall back to some cover if they can. They do actually manage to put a little bit of hurt onto the Night Terrors, who of course did have a significant armor reduction in this patch. But meanwhile, in the front, the rest of the Wood Elf line has started to get in range. And the Glade Riders look like they've pulled back to somewhat safety, but at the very least, they're keeping the Carronades pointed the direction they want to. We do see a couple of abilities go down. We see a Hounds of Orion go down from, well, Orion. And it, unfortunately, just kind of literally sits in a spot where it's not useful, which is very unfortunate. But he does run into battle and start tearing people up. And a really, really nice Awakening of the Woods right in the middle of that Zombie Pirate Gunnery group, which is going to do a ton of damage. Meanwhile, the healthy unit of Glade Riders has run back into range of this Carronade and is opening fire. The Dryads have run into battle, and Noctilus does use his first Moondal summon to go after these Glade Guard, but they're probably just going to casually walk out of range. I'd be surprised if the Wood Elves even designate anything to deal with this. We do see that this unit of Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob is taking quite a bit of damage from leadership, and a really, really nice sexy charge coming in from these Wild Riders right into the flank of the Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob. And although they are being closed in on both sides by the pole arms, they are not going to be able to do so without a significant amount of ass whoopings from the War Dancers. That being said, the Wild Riders are being pinned in on all sides thanks to the Lamprey's Revenge holding them in place. But things are looking pretty well for the Wood Elves. The sustained fire from the Glade Riders has managed to deal with the Carronade. It's pretty much wiped it down to just a couple of crewmen, and most of the crew is completely wiped out and dead. Meanwhile, Wild Riders are just sort of running around the army looking for weak parts, while the Carronade has lost its last model and is pretty much just a disintegrating crew at this point. We do see that Orion still is in the midst. Looks like he's fighting up against the Night Terrors now, who he will actually do very, very well in a battle up against. They are not well suited for that fight. These Wild Riders do manage to get their opening and do get a nice charge into these Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs, though they do eat a bullet from Noctilus for their trouble. Over here, we do see that this group managed to break free after being run down a fair bit, and Orion, as I stated, has put an absolute beatdown on these Morghuls. Meanwhile, that one unit of Scurvy Dogs is actually proving to be quite annoying and has done managed to deal with a unit of Eternal Guard. It looks like it's about to catch a unit of Glade Guard with Hagbane tips. Sarmatian needs to get his Spear Elves involved. He has a ton of Spear Elves who do have significant armor-piercing damage, just kind of sitting around not doing anything. They need to get involved in the fight. The balance of power has started to tick in favor of the Vampire Coast, as all of these different Spearman units have started to surround the Branch Wraith, and Orion is actually taking a surprising amount of damage due to sustained fire from this unit of Zombie Pirate Gunnery mobs. And over here, we do see this one unit of Zombie Pirate Deckhand mobs is about to go down, but Noctilus is not one to be, or Orion is not one to go down without a fight, and he is popping off what abilities he can to support the Branch Wraith, who's actually doing surprisingly well in this little engagement. Noctilus, in the meantime, is continuing to harass really well, and those Scurvy Dogs actually did a really good job of being just a super big annoyance to the Wood Elves and allowing a lot of their units to get into good positions. That being said, the Depth Guard have been caught out, and they're being crossfired by 2 different elf shooting units, and that is probably going to spell doom for them, though Noctilus is still getting in quite a bit of damage with his really, really nasty gun. Over here, we do see the Night Terrors have begun to rampage as they continue wailing against Orion, but he does not stand alone, as in come the Wild Riders charging into the Zombie Pirate Deckhand mob and the Night Terrors and trying to do what they can in support. We do see another charge coming here from these Wild Riders into the Zombie Pirate Gunnery mob with handguns, who are the last true nasty unit standing between the Wood Elves and turning this into a pure melee fight where they might be able to turn things in their advantage. Meanwhile, Orion is basically completely surrounded at this point, and he is taking a ton of damage. It looks like he's trying to get out of there, but I think honestly for him, he's better off just fighting as best he can at this point. We do see some Hounds of Orion get summoned, and unfortunately, they end up causing a significant amount of friendly fire while these guys are being fired up by archers, which could do some considerable leadership damage, and things are looking pretty rough for the Vampire Coast. We do see the Zombie Pirate Gunnery Mob over here, despite being at significant leadership penalties, are still only crumbling, and they are not shattered. They're merely crumbled, which is kind of an unfortunate thing with the undead right now that seems kind of broken. Not broken as in overpowered, broken as in it doesn't seem to be working correctly, the disintegration policy. But in any event, the Wood Elves are pretty much down to just their leadership squad and a couple of isolated groups. And although a nice Hawk's Talon does come down here to do some damage, and Orion is very, very tough to kill due to his incredible healing power and the ward save he's running right now, there's just not a lot of places that he can be safely. There's still a relatively healthy unit of handguns. Noctilus, of course, is still around at full health, and Noctilus is no slouch in close combat. He can actually do a ton of damage. And things are just looking really, really rough for the Wood Elves, and you can see various units here are starting to shatter and break off. The only units left still standing are the Unbreakable units, and that is going to be game because I just don't see the Wood Elves turning this around with their 2 Unbreakable groups, even with the Cloak of Aisha and the Winter Heart's a really, really nice stat line. There's just way too many guns left. You got shotguns, you got handguns, you got the Noctilus gun. Noctilus is still pumping out summons. I just don't see a way that the Wood Elves can really turn this in their favor. And this is kind of one of the nasty things. I honestly think that the build people need to build for to be prepared in this tournament is to build so that you're prepared to deal with dwarves, and build so that you're prepared to deal with Count Noctilus running a unit that has at least about 12, anywhere from 12 to 15 units of zombie pirate deckhand mobs. Because quite frankly, those are the builds that we see winning the most. Count Noctilus running with like 5 units of halberds and 5 units of zombie pirate deckhand mobs. That is almost always a build that shows up in these tourneys. And I think we've only seen it lose like maybe twice out of the like 10 plus weeks we've been doing this. At this point though, it's pretty much down to just this last little engagement. And it looks like Sarmatian's just kind of bitterly fighting to the end here, but it's only really a matter of time. I mean, Orion can only do so much, and he's getting a decent amount of healing off, but there's nothing he can really do in this instance. Oh, all the sad face. Yeah, really not a lot left to comment on in this battle. Like, it's pretty much over. It looks like Sarmatian's just kind of playing it to the end. Oh, my lord. How are y'all doing, chat? And we got a whopping 200 people in here. Hope you're all having a great day. My day's going pretty decent. Yeah, it'll be up to the Tomb Kings. Alright, and there Sarmatian has handed off the battle. And with that, we are off to the finals, which not for the first time is a dead-off between the Tomb Kings and the Vampire Counts. Coast. And I don't know why Hit by a Tree left, because he has to play again here in literally like 2 seconds. All right, and with that, we are on to the final game for today. Hit by a Tree versus Pharaoh of War. And let's head somewhere a little more fitting, shall we? How about... What's that map? Where's my map list? Ah, yes. The Iron Sand Desert. No more appropriate a battlefield could there be. Galleon's Graveyard. No, I don't think that's considered a tourney-approved battlefield. It's a fun battlefield, but it's not great for tourneys. And I wanted to go ahead and thank you all for coming by today. If you're enjoying yourselves, please consider hitting that like button. It does help out the channel significantly as it shows really good interaction between the community and myself, and shows YouTube that people want to see this, and it can show up in their feeds or what have you. And of course helps, like I said, support the channel in a nice free way that all that requires is you clicking a button. Or hell, even dislike it. I don't give a shit. Just click something. I would love to see over 100 likes, though, considering we've got over 200 of you wonderful bastards here with us today. Alright, so Hit by a Tree is now on my friends list, so I should be able to just... Boop. Because he's a goofball and he left. Thukat, I doubt it. Alright. Just realized Hit by a Tree's symbol is literally a money bag. I wonder if he knows this tournament doesn't offer rewards. Oh, thanks, Sue Devil. Hello, Zero Ultima. Oh, no, Drees. I'm glad we were able to rectify that. Thank you, sir. I appreciate it. All right. Welcome to the finals of today's tabletop tournament, or as we probably really need to start calling it, the Challenge of the Old Ones, even though everyone prefers referring to it as the tabletop tournament, because there are people that get really confused when they're like tabletop tournament, and then it's not a tabletop game, and they don't realize it's based on old tabletop rules. In any event, let's start with Pharaoh of War. We've got 2 units of Tomb Scorpions, 3 units of Ushabti, 2 units of Carrion that are really flying high right now. We've got 5 units of Skeleton Spearmen, one of which is King Takesha's Scorpion Legion, 1 unit of Nehekara Warriors, 1 unit of Skeleton Warriors. Then we've got a Necrotect with all of his items and abilities, and then we've got Cetra the Imperishable with Incantation of Desiccation, Incantation of Protection, and Incantation of Cursed Blades, along with the Blessed Blade of Petra. Meanwhile, over on the Vampire Coast side, we have the Lamprey's Revenge, the Night Terrors. Then we've got a single unit of Scurvy Dogs, the 2 Chevrons, who did a really, really good job in that Wood Elf game. Then we've got 4 units of Zombie Pyro Deckhand Mob, 5 units of Zombie Pyro Deckhand Mobs with pole arms, 1 Carronade, Count Noctilus up on his Necrofex Colossus with all of his summoning spells, 2 units of Zombie Pyro Gunnery Mobs with handguns, 1 unit of Depth Guard, and that's it. So, we've got a nice undead showdown here, and it's time to find out who will win. Misha, you're married? I didn't know that. Why don't you tell me things? I mean, I know I've been busy, but damn. We'll talk later. Alright, so the battle has begun. And it's definitely going to be a race for the Tomb Kings to get over here as quick as they possibly can. The Carronades have opened fire, and it looks like they are focusing their efforts on nothing, based on that shot. What about these shots? Oh, the Ushabti are definitely going to feel that one. I think they're both going to get back up, but man, did they eat some nasty damage for that. We do see the Carrion coming in from both flanks, and hopefully Pharaoh of War will be able to time it appropriately so that they swoop in on both of these handgun units just in time to take them offline for when the Tomb Kings move across this magical line right here. Meanwhile, the Night Terrors have been sighted going out onto their far flank there, likely spotted by these Carrion swooping around. Carronade continues to get a couple of shots off, and the Tomb Kings are, of course, approaching the death line And it looks like the Carrion are waiting for their proper moment to swoop in, not wanting to do it too early. Gotta time it just right. And now we enter the big phase, and here we go. Sure enough, first unit of Carrion has swooped down into the zombie pirate gunnery mob, though for some reason only half the unit went down, and some of them even landed in the pole arms for some reason. But in any event, they are attacking those units there. Meanwhile, we do see that the handguns have opened up into the spearmen, who do of course have silver shields, so they will be mitigating a very large percentage of that damage. Meanwhile, this other unit has landed here, and now it looks like Cetra is just going to weave his way to wherever he wants to go that he considers important. So he is just absolutely smashing his way through the zombies, does not give two fat squats, and he hops right into the middle here and gets a really nice sunburst blast right off, and the Tomb Kings now charge in with all of their force right into the midst of this mass. We do see a summon going down here from Noctilus to try and punish Cetra the Imperishable for maybe wandering a little bit too far, and if he can, he needs to try and charge something that's out of this melee, because that charge bonus to his speed combos well with his mass. But we do see that the Tomb Kings here literally obliterate their way through this front line, and although this unit of zombies is still technically alive, they are just kind of pushed aside effortlessly. And the Ushabti run straight back to the carronade and are absolutely tearing it apart. They do eat a little bit of a shot from Noctilus, but it actually doesn't do too much damage considering how many models it managed to hit. Meanwhile, the Carrion over here are doing a really, really nice job, still being just an absolute annoyance to the zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns, just fighting to the bitter end. And these spearmen are doing a little bit of damage to the Night Terrors, but of course the Night Terrors do have healing in close combat and are likely going to come out of that engagement just fine. The Carronade here is literally, it's pretty much dead offline, it's definitely not firing, and a Tomb Scorpion is getting very, very close to Noctilus and just being as annoying as possible. We do see that there are Ushabti on top of this zombie pirate gunnery mob with handguns, and if the Tomb Kings can take out both of these zombie pirate gunnery mobs efficiently, they're going to be in a really, really good place. We do see the first Realm of Souls proc going off. Noctilus does cast an Overcast Invocation of the Heck to try and keep everything here alive, as the Lamprey's Revenge is eating a ton of damage. And unfortunately for the Tomb Kings, the Mournguls have finished their breakfast over there and are now swarming in for brunch. This zombie pirate gunnery mob has gotten back online and is starting to shoot into the Ushabti over here. They definitely need to try and dedicate some kind of unit to deal with these guys if they can. Meanwhile, Cetra is continuing to do really, really well in this fight. Looks like they are about to force one of these, well, this unit looks like it's about to die, but it doesn't really matter. It's a summoned unit, so the value for that isn't super duper great. So that unit's going to disappear any moment. And Cetra is actually taking a ton of damage, likely due to the fact that he's casting a ton of spells. It looks like he is mainly dealing with the Lamprey's Revenge, but before these guns can get too much more value, this Tomb Scorpion does run in against them and is taking them offline. If Cetra can, he needs to get back on Noctilus because he is more than fast enough to keep up and take that son of a gun down. Meanwhile, the front line is starting to swing in favor of the Vampire Coast, and it's very, very noticeable. The Tomb Kings need to get some serious firepower onto Noctilus and start applying pressure to him. The Lamprey's Revenge are not the best target for concentrated firepower just because they can take so much of it, and if Noctilus keeps feeding them with invocations of the heck like he is, they will sustain through absolute absurdity. Cetra needs to get back here and he needs to get on to Noctilus and start punishing him as best he can, or at least providing support to this far flank out here. Either way, it doesn't really matter. He does need to be careful though. If he gets too far away from his infantry, he could be in a dangerous position. We do see that the both of the gunnery mobs, well, this one over here has been completely taken offline. This one over here is still being harassed heavily by the Tomb Scorpion, who's doing really well. The Ushabti summon does go down here, and it looks like their goal is to either swarm the Depth Guard or Noctilus. But either way, they are certainly getting work done, and you can see Noctilus is actually spam summoning at this point. Cetra does get knocked down to 50% health, and he does a beautiful curse, doing tons of damage to just all these different units, and that's going to get so much excellent value. And it looks like he's kind of trying to pull out a little bit. He does get the Elixir of Might popped on himself. He also pops an Overcast Dejav's Cursed Blade, and he pops the Blessed Blade of Petra, and it looks like he's trying to get to Noctilus. If he can get to Noctilus, he will do a ton of damage thanks to the myriad of buffs. There, he takes a really, really nice chunk, pops a nice explosion to buy himself a little bit of space, and yep, sure enough, Noctilus is feeling the burn. Meanwhile, over here, things are looking really, really rough for the Vampire Coast due to the nastiness of these Night Terrors. They're actually doing a really good job of just fighting their way through. And here we can see the Lamprey's Revenge have pretty much reached their healing cap. They do still have 7 models left, and Noctilus is trying to break away through this fight, but these zombies are super heavy if he doesn't have a charge animation going. But there he goes. He does get his lovely charge animation, and he's about to go slap Noctilus really hard in the butt, though he does get caught off by his own Tomb Scorpion, which is rather unfortunate. If he can, taking out the Night Terrors might not be a bad diversion at the moment. This unit is very, very annoying and has some really nasty abilities. Though they don't have a ton of armor, you know, they rely significantly on their missile resistance and healing to keep them alive. If they can get burst down like they are right now, they're down to 5 models. If they can go ahead and get them off the field, that would be a very, very good catch for the Tomb Kings, who have managed to stabilize the balance of power, though it is still in the Vampire Coast's favor. Here we do see that the Necrotect is extremely weak, but Cetra has managed to push out, and although he eats a nasty cannon shot to the face, and Cetra seems to have a really, really hard time following through with his orders and staying on Noctilus, who keeps interrupting him with that ugly shot in the face. He just fires so fast. Cetra does finally manage to jump on him and is doing some damage, but he's eating a bunch of halberds and the Lamprey's Revenge in the rear, and those cannon shots are all so nasty because they just come through and they do a lot of damage. But we do see that Cetra does manage to chain together a bunch of attacks and a really, really nice successful chain, doing a significant amount of damage to Noctilus. But these Duel of the Titans here, they're doing a really, really good job stun locking each other. However, unfortunately for Cetra, he is still kind of getting shot in the butt by this Lamprey's Revenge. And I actually do think the Tomb Kings have the advantage in the range fight, and it might be better for Cetra to pull away from this battle while he still has over 1,000 health. He's down to 900 now. Meanwhile, Noctilus is down to 4,500, but he's healing because he's fighting Cetra in close combat, and he is a vampire. Yeah, it really, really might be better for Cetra to pull back a little bit, but oh, he eats a nasty, nasty cannon shot to the face. And if Cetra dies, which he's about to here at any moment, I don't think the Tomb Kings are going to be able to turn this around. Noctilus is just way too tanky, and sure enough, Cetra does fall. And with Cetra's death, the balance of power does swing a little bit more into the Vampire Coast's favor, though the Vampire Coast is running very, very thin on troops that it has available. But unfortunately, Noctilus does still count for an absurd amount of the balance of power. And although there are 2 Tomb Scorpions left, and they are more than capable of dealing with this infantry line, Noctilus is not a pushover, and he is going to absolutely curb stomp these Scorpions if they cannot absolutely get rid of all these halberd units, which are of course being sustained by Noctilus's healing, who's just a really nasty character. Although they did debuff him significantly when he's on foot, I still feel like he does need a significant reduction in how he influences the balances of power, and he probably also needs a reduction in health when he's on top of his Necrofex, because man, he's just so nasty on that. Because although he got debuffed on foot, to my understanding, he did not get a debuff while on top of his Necrofex, which is still a very, very effective and efficient, quite frankly, costed unit. There we do see the last of the Tomb King infantry has died, so all that's left is the Tomb Scorpions. They are surrounded by anti-large zombie Pyrodeccan mobs and the Lamprey's Revenge, and it's just not a good situation for them. Like, they'll probably be able to get rid of the Lamprey's Revenge if they're careful, but Noctilus still has ammo left. He could still easily sort of just walk out of here and pop a couple shots, and there we do see that disintegration activates for all of the Tomb Kings, and with that is game. So, yet again, Noctilus has claimed victory in the tabletop tourney. I think for the 4th time, the 5th time. Just a brutal character. He's just kind of one of those things that people got to be ready for. Because I honestly think if it wasn't Noctilus, I don't think the Vampire Coast would be winning as often. Noctilus still feels really strong. He did get slapped with some very significant nerfs when it comes to the way summons work, and he also did get nerfed significantly when he's on foot. But at the end of the day, I still feel like Noctilus is probably way too strong. That being said, pretty interesting army by Hit by a Tree. It was certainly quite different than what we've seen before, especially with the Regiment of Renowned Night Terrors, who actually did really, really well in this battle. They were absolutely tearing people up all along the flanks and did a really good job getting rid of reserve infantry. Meanwhile, Pharaoh played the game extremely well. I don't really know if there's a lot he could have done different. I think the only thing I saw is he did his usual strat of going for the Overcast Incantation of Desiccation, and it looks like it might have been targeted in the wrong spot, but it's hard to say. In any event, that's going to do it for today. Hit by a Tree is today's / this week's champion, which he is a new face, so that's good. It's not like it's King of the Dead or Falcon winning yet another round. So at least it's somebody new this week. But in any event, congratulations to Hit by a Tree for winning with his Vampire Coast build with Count Noctilus. It was a very different Vampire Coast build, so I was glad to see that. He took a lot of unorthodox units, and it wasn't the same cheesy nonsense that we've seen. It was something different. So in any event, thank you all for watching very much. I might be back tomorrow with a tournament. I don't know yet. It depends on if there are any other tournaments going on tomorrow, what they are, and if I have time to get the new rule set out. But there is a new rule set that's going to be for a different tournament. That the goal is to have these tabletop tournaments on Fridays and then have the new variant on Saturdays, but we'll see what happens. In any event, thank you all again so much for watching. I will catch you guys later. I need to go finish recording a bunch of nonsense, and I need to turn on a bunch of fans because it is hot as fuck in here. So, thanks again for watching. Yes, we will continue the Ten of Wand campaign later today, so look forward to that. And we'll be doing Chaos Bane even later today, but on Twitch. So until then, have a good night, everyone. Thank you all for watching. See you next time. Bye. I'll leave y'all with some outro music, because why not?